No one believed me, until I understood he hadn't just appeared. He had been walking behind me for days. I have always trusted the forest more than man. That might seem like an odd way to start a story, but it is true. Trees don't make false declarations. Animals express what they feel without any hidden agendas. You can tell what's dangerous and what's not. Hunger has a look. Fear is recognized by how it looks. I go camping alone because it is so much harder to read people. The journey took me deep into the Washington woods, close to Mount Rainier. Not the campsite. This is not a loop trail. Lost amidst the woods, far from the roads, your mobile phone switches off for good, and the maps lose order. I wished to be at a distance. I needed quietness. A silence and solitude that can happen only when civilization is merely a theoretical thing. The initial evening was serene, excessively tranquil. I felt as though the forest itself was watching me. Serious issue. When I stare into my fire, I am often reminded of how frequently we feel we're being watched, and how infrequent we feel the opposite. The ashes gleamed ashen. The stars were very near. The wind stopped blowing. I went to bed believing I was really lonely. In the midst of the night, I awoke to a lack of sound, not a sound itself. No bugs. Stillness in air. No animals' calls of distance. Just silence so total it felt intentional. The sound of my own breathing thundered in my ear. There was something off, every instinct said. For what seemed like hours, I stayed completely still, hoping that I had imagined it all. I extended my hand toward the tent zipper, methodically, calmly. As I opened it, I immediately hit him with my headlamp. A man sat precisely at the site of my fire. With his hands resting lightly on knees and legs crossed, he stared at the cold ash as if it were warm. Close, very near, no backpack, without torch, supplies not visible. Just a normal-looking man, in dark clothing, his face half lit by my beam. When the light came into his eyes, they went wide, not in anger, not a threat, but in shock. Fearful as though he had not counted on me. We only looked at each other. Then he ran into the woods without saying anything. After that, I did not sleep. Inside the tent with my headlamp dim and the fire out, I began to replay the moment in my mind in every way possible. By morning, reasonable explanations were back. Perhaps he was lost. Perhaps he was high. Perhaps he thought the place was his. The forest is home to odd acts. I ended it and moved on. That was the error. A couple of days later, I was gone. Not further down that same path, but an entirely different direction. Fresh height, changed soil. Not the sort of place you'd want to stumble into accidentally. That night I sat by the fire, feeding it and listening. Tread slowly. Regulated, be cautious. I shouted at him, trying to act casual. Hello? A voice spoke out of the darkness. At peace. Respectful. Could you guide me to Bell's Canyon? Thanks in advance. The name was foreign to me. I indicated to him no. The voice remained just outside the firelight, asking strange random questions like how long I'd been out here. My following destination was, did I normally camp by myself? The words hit me like a hammer, but I couldn't quite pinpoint why. I lifted my flashlight in the direction of the trees. Don't focus that on me, he said sharply. The tone of his voice made me feel queasy. I brought it down. The conversation continued. However, the gap between us has changed now. The sound was closer this time. Not rushed, but merely nearer. I lifted the flashlight up once more. The bright beam of light found him in the dark. Same person, Matching outfits' eyes are same. We stayed motionless for quite a while. Out of the blue, he ran away. I ran after him for a bit before I felt fear arise. The forest mostly closed in after about 100 feet. Realization hit me while standing there alone with heart pounding. We have never bumped into each other twice. He had trailed behind me. The trip ended before the sun came up. What was meant to be a hike out in a day turned into 3. I always returned, altered course. I moved off the trail, froze, and listened in hopes of hearing him. Every snapped twig caused me to start. Every shadow has a personality of its own. My tent kept getting circled by slow footsteps, my first night hiking out. Suffering. Around when I breathe in, I pause, and when I exhale, I resume. When I checked for the first time, nothing was there. On the second night, I heard howling. Initially, I thought it was a beast, but the tempo repeated. Something seems off, overly restrained, like someone rehearsing. I stood still. I held my breath. When I reached the 3rd day, I was exhausted. All the fatigue and weariness made everything fuzzy. Le ombre erano sbagliate. Sounds of breaking branches became deliberate with each step. I felt my knees buckle when I saw my car. I fell down on the ground with tears on my face. It was relief, not fear. It hurts almost. I didn't reflect again. I was scared. I did not inform anyone. There was nothing to mention, nothing provided. Nameless need more elaboration? Simply the assurance I had that someone had chosen me and discovered how softly I moved through the woods. I no longer camp by myself, not on account of animals. Due to ghosts, not. But it seems that somewhere someone know how softly I walk. At times, I wake up hearing the sound of footsteps right near my bed in the night. What would you do if you were all alone at night? The road behind us went dark, and that's when the SUV sped up, feeling grateful to book a campsite. A campsite along the beach at Boysen Reservoir, Wyoming. Awe-inspiring view of woods and mountains. Magical time at a campground. I believed I was utterly alone. It felt like heaven back in the day. But I didn't yet know how scary silence could feel in the absence of anyone who would affirm what was going down. When you find yourself all alone, your mind will fill up that empty space. When the sun goes down, Wyoming will clear out. Immediately, the usual afterglow will be absent. There will be no glimmering lights or sound of traffic. None of all that lasts more than a second. Everything is bitten by darkness. It becomes something more solid. The silence closes in on you, a cord wrapping around your chest that you can almost feel. The stillness amplifies every sound, particularly twigs and leaves, which feel like a noise and warning. We got the campsite arranged quite quickly. Fire was started and chairs were set around it with cooler and tents. The lake appeared as a dark mirror everywhere you gazed. I recall staring at the water, and it was so dark that I thought it was swallowing the sky. The fire, though, reflected in the water, showing its flickers. In that moment of tense anticipation, headlights pierced the darkness, revealing a SUV with tinted windows, making its way down the narrow dirt road towards our site. There are no plates, not diminishing, without hesitation. They looked quite at home. They seemed rather formal. The husband assumed they were confused and waved. They did not reciprocate. They continued on. They continued driving past us and onto the beach. They briefly stayed in this location. The engine is on, but nothing is moving. No opening of doors and lighting on. An SUV is just an SUV and darkness. Nothing was reflected in lake. The woods at the rear engulfed all. My stomach clenched. I could feel my heart beating. Acknowledge the red flags. I told myself maybe they were lost. Maybe there is an explanation. My instincts disagreed with that. Neither of us spoke as the vehicle turned back up the main road and disappeared. The entire atmosphere seemed to buzz with menace. My husband bent down toward me, voice then low but urgent. Pack everything. Now don't freak out. Avoid loudness. Only urgent. I grabbed just about anything I could get my hands on. Sleeping bags, tents, coolers, and chairs. The flashlight was always trained on the beach, getting the sand, the water's edge, the dark. Neither of us said it, although it was on our minds. What if someone stayed behind? We rushed into our vehicle and left quickly as possible. The bumpy dirt road started going up the canyon in a narrow and potholed manner. Wild animals could be found wandering through the area, deer, elk, anything. The tires made a crunching noise as they went over gravel and rocks. The headlights bounced off the canyon walls, signaling someone for help. The headlights appeared once more. The SUV that crashed here just turned around and sped back up the canyon. It came charging into our tent. The instant they viewed, the rear road was darkened when the car behind above the speed limit. They swiftly gained on it. Too rapidly. The route was tough, winding and narrow with sheer drops at the edges. A single false step could finish all. One deer that jumps on the road can do the same. My husband's fists were clenched around the steering wheel. I have to hurry, he said. Is that all right with you? I didn't show any hesitation. Just leave. Take us out of here. 80 miles per hour on roads that had no business seeing that speed. We tested the car's limits to the max. Each curve, each bump, and every jarred rock or rut made them conscious. The SUV was basically still behind us. Glowing headlights, always. Unyielding. Each curve and shadow and dip in the road felt designed that would make us make a wrong move. I was cold because it was a Wyoming night, but my back was sweaty. In essence, a drum beat was going off in my heart. Next up was the canyon. What a disaster. The stones started getting closer to us. The street became tighter. Shadows gathered around. The sound made by the engine similarly bounced off the rocks, making us feel even more scared. The SUV disappeared for a moment behind the bend. I did not forget to breathe. Then came on the headlights, still pursuing. You are enclosing us still. I felt as though 10 minutes had gone by, but it had not. My body was cold and empty. I was out of breath while skimming. Every fiber of my being cried out that I would fail. The road was the focus of my eyes, not my mind. This device recorded every curve, turn, and exit that could potentially trigger them. My husband was clenching his jaw and clenching the wheel. I shuddered every time that I looked in the rearview mirror. A shadow was at the windows, lurking, awaiting a wrong move from us. 17 words. My husband almost veered off course as a packet of deer showed up on road. Loose gravel caused the tires to skid. The SUV passed us safely, a shadow in our mirrors. I was flooded with adrenaline. Our hands grabbed the steering wheel tighter. I heard the beating of my heart. I could sense the danger. I remained frozen and hyper-aware. Then the SUV went around another curve and did not look back. It was only miles later, past the canyon and past anywhere those men could be hiding, that we slowed. It was only at that moment we exhaled. When a customer recommends your product to someone, you gain their trust and they feel comfortable buying from you. People are more likely to trust a human being they know rather than a random brand. And this holds for everyone. For example, we have all bought something or used a service after getting a reference from a friend. A brand that can be referred to as suggesting reputable travel agencies to individuals planning to travel abroad or to other states. Suggesting health service providers to A. We never alerted the authorities as there was no evidence. No plates, no faces, no explanation. It was only the knowledge that someone had been watching us. That's sufficient. If we went back 5 years ago and ignored the diagnosed problem, then we definitely wouldn't be smiling here and writing this now. I don't frequent isolated campsites by myself anymore. Not due to animals. Not because of the night. Someone, not you, not me, somewhere out there decided that we were a target. And maybe, just maybe, they're unjaded, driving down a dark country road, and I'm all alone. The night is quiet and deserted, but I could swear I see headlights in the distance. If you were left alone in the dark, would you trust your instincts quickly? Something was outside my tent, and it knew I was awake. I'm typically someone who considers himself a pretty reasonable person. Eerie shadows and creaky noises may surprise me into jumping back, but I try and remind myself that they are perfectly reasonable usually. It is a kind of fear that does not need eyes. The way you curl up in my chest, pressing my heart until my breath is unsteady and pulse quickens. Fearing you are not the only one. That night at Beaver Creek Campground, Montana illustrated that lesson to me perfectly. It wasn't the gentle flow of the creek or the twinkling stars above. It also was not the wind blowing through the trees. It wasn't just that my tent almost collapsed with the wind, but rather the absolute knowledge that something or someone was inches from me. The air was too still and thick with the scent of pine and moss. The treetops moved in the breezes above. In summer 2023, we visited Montana, hoping to spend a short camping trip while we were on a Yellowstone tour. My mom, stepdad, and stepdad's brother had all fallen asleep. Their tents were set up by around midnight. I remained by the fire for another hour, watching the flames' colors and hearing the breathing of the woods. It was still and peaceful. Too peaceful. As I extinguished the fire and took my leave, the darkness became disorienting. It was likely around 12:30 a.m. The moon was still creeping above the horizon, while the stars weren't bright enough for a glimmering backdrop. The forest was continuous, appearing to flow through the trees to reach the other side of me. I got inside my tent, zipped it up and laid down, staring wide-eyed in the dark. 20 minutes, possibly other. Detecting, unhurried, intentional, soaked. The tent fabric rustled slightly as the sniffs dug deep into my pack. Sounds very demanding and intense. Bear? The thought struck him forcefully. We were inside a bear area, storing food correctly. Examine. Cleaning up every piece? Okay. Rechecking. Examine. I thought a bear. I was still. Not a muscle twitched. No blinking. Not a sound. My body froze and my mind was racing. The tent was circled by sniffs. Every breath was more exciting than the last. Heart racing. Afterwards, there was a change. The beat became quicker and lighter. The shake joined the beat. A joker, a tail? People could be heard whispering, finally. A feline. Canine pet. It may belong to someone in your neighborhood. A canine, but then it ceases. And the footsteps began. Was slow and purposeful and heavy enough to press the earth down. After that, the sound of a stick scraping across dirt and pebbles follows, patrolling the campsite again and again. Systematic. My heart was beating loudly in my ears. Human, absolutely a human. Then came the flash, an image captured by camera flash, just ahead of the tent. My body became paralyzed. The fabric illuminated for a brief moment and went dark. I screamed in mind. The edge of the tent applied pressure, soft pressure, caution, intended. It grazed my arm. I sensed it. Fists, hands. I had no idea. 5 minutes. 5 minutes of being stuck in that plummeting, frozen fright. I prayed in silence. Kindly go away. Kindly leave me be. Leave it shut. The zipper slid. A gentle, unhurried pull. Due to the shivering of my voice, I forced it out. Who's that? The forest engulfed my words. Stillness. Then I hear my stepdad's voice. It is sharp, alert, and calling my name. He opened the tent. I kept mum. 10 seconds later, it's sufficient for him to be outside with a gun. My body trembled. Once that was done, I unzipped my tent and tumbled out. 0. Footsteps moving forward. No noise, no activity, nothing. The family pet did not respond. Do not bark. No low rumble, no change, even slightly. Every shadowy corner at the campsite was scanned for clues with flashlight beams, from the trees to the bushes. N.A. no track. Nothing thrown away. Not found nothing. However, the memory stayed. The tent came down. The stick dragged on. The flash. You still feel it. I can still hear it. Stay scared of it. For the next 2 nights, I did not sleep in the tent. I used to sleep locked up in the car, eyes all around, listening, waiting for something, a branch, an animal call to jump. It did not occur. But the harm was inflicted. The character of Montana by day is very different from the night. The forest seems expansive during daytime, ample, secure, and attractive. During the night, it became infinite. The trees turned into walls. The shapes were impossible to disregard. Every action appeared deliberate. Every noise shattered the silence. You may feel like the darkest thing until you realize silence is the darkest. My thoughts went to something like this that night. Isolation scares the shit of you. Not for what is there, but for what you think is there. The aroma of wet pine needles, the remnants of our campfire smoke, and the chilly, moist ground beneath our tent made everything much more real. I wasn't just afraid. I was nervous. That's what the mind does to survive. I could hear every noise and feel every vibration. Even the tiniest snap of a branch would outfit the announcement. The screeches of owls and howls of coyotes seemed natural. The timeline would hop from bear to human, trying to assess their ability, intent, and why I was the target. Even distant noises like breaking branches or crunching leaves startled me and made me flinch. The brain wants to fill in what the eyes can't always see. Every shadow held movement. Every pause held a watcher. I was looking for a rationale. The culprit could have been a camper from the adjacent site, or possibly a stray animal, but these do not fit. I knew that the timing and the way its clock was moving was intentional, and that it knew I was awake. I began to picture objects in the shade. I considered the possibility that eyes were watching every little movement I made. I quickly calculated every route they could potentially approach us from. I was trapped by something unknown. Even though I wanted to get up and see, I didn't. I was hoping to be only alert of any sounds, and I could not power up to act. For a moment, I gave it thought. If I called out again, would it move? But what if it's not human? The seconds slipped away as the heartbeats amplified in my head. A noise that brushed against the tent caused me to jump vigorously with my heart racing. When I yelled out a little louder, the presence froze. I was able to sense it. It existed there. I didn't see it, but yet deeply believe it was watching. My stepdad showed up with a gun in his hand. After freezing for 10 seconds, I unzipped the tent, ventured out into the dark. Nada. The dragging stick device has ceased. The flash is finished. Notice no presence of a person moving away, no sound, not changing, only darkness, eternal shade. The forest was completely still, like a held breath. They are waiting for me to strike first. Even when I walked to the car, the flashlight shaking all over, I felt it. I sensed it was watching me. The shadows were poised, slightly out of sight, but alert to my movements and ready to spring. What you saw move in the wind was a leaf. That was something. Another thing. The existence. You heard a noise across the park. That was the signal. I was under observation still. Something departed the site. I succeeded in getting there. I no longer slept in the tents the same way. I can't sleep by myself anymore. I become tense at the slightest sound, be it that of rustling leaves or an animal sound. That night still crosses my mind even after all these years. The sniffing, footsteps, stick dragging, flicker, zipper tugging. These are familiar sounds of a tiger. I rethink every delay, every subtlety. The encounter taught me to respect darkness more than before. Sometimes I feel fear without having evidence or assurance. It is enough, unknown. Darkness goes deeper than trees. Shadows hold more than three. Silence is never owned by anyone. I still replay the small details, how long it stayed, the feel of the tent corner pressed down, the tug on the zipper a test. The memory is like a tattoo, it warns me. It reminds me that you are never alone. Even now, I think of how it waited while I looked up at the ceiling. I was bathing in the light of my torch, how it stayed there. The tent corner pushed downwards, and the brush rubbed against my arm. The tug on the zipper was what they used as a test. It was intentional. It was spot on. It waited patiently. It crosses my mind. How? Picture yourself lying there, aware of someone or something outside. Just shape up pushing the limits. Would you stay quiet or make yourself acknowledged? I experienced how scary that decision is. And sometimes late at night, I feel the corner of the bed tug a little, as if it remembers. If you were in a tent alone and felt something or someone testing your space, would you ignore it or get it to recognize you? In darkness, hesitation may lose you everything.